So, welcome to you if you're joining me, expecting me to talk about maths teaching as I always do this time on a Sunday. Today's going to be a little bit different. I'm back in Cockermouth today, and I think it's really necessary to talk about what's going on here in West Cumbria in politics. And I have always spoken about politics on this channel as well as maths education. I do have another maths education video going live later today about my petition on the multiplication tables check, which is going really well, answering all the questions about that. And I should have another video about education going live this week, an interview about the whole big book of whole school wellbeing. But I'm back here and it's really hard to know how to talk about this. I was a councillor here in Cockermouth for 5 years until last year, and one of my principles was never to talk ill of other people in politics. I just talked about what I wanted to do and why you should elect me, because I wanted to do all these things, and I talked about what was going on and just tried to do a good job for people. I don't want to say negative things about people in politics because it makes people less likely to want to get involved and feel more that they want to stay away from it. So it's the last thing that I would want to do, but I need to talk about this. And sorry, it's a struggle to find the words. It's a struggle to know how to begin. So I lived in the old world of politics. It was here in Cumbria. You get elected and then you find yourself dealing with all these issues that you weren't prepared for. They're not what you were particularly passionate about when you got elected, and people just worked across party. We had 4 tiers of elected people. We had town and parish councillors who are unpaid and do amazing work, and I've been a town councillor. Then we have district councillors. Our district is Allerdale, where all the work that can be done locally with small government is done. And then county councillors, and then MPs. And at county council level and MP level, it was really non-partisan. The vast majority of the time, except at election time, at that level, we worked really hard together. We all valued having multiple parties involved in the same issues because we could feed back into different groups in Westminster, and the more people you've got looking at our issues, because we're so remote and we have so many unique issues here, then the better. I worked really closely with I was a Lib Dem. I loved being a Lib Dem because everyone could see I was really independent, but I still had a great support network. But I worked really closely with our Labour MP, who I personally really liked and respected. I also worked really well with senior Tories, had great relationships with them. I hugely valued working with Rory Stewart on complex issues. And this time I should touch on this time last year, I suddenly had to stand down. I had just horrific issues going on in my life, and I went to the people who mentor me and said, I am really struggling to cope. I don't know how to cope with this, and I think I may need to stand down. And they listened to me, and I was expecting them to try and pressure me to stay because they knew how much I loved it, and we had a zero majority on county council. You know, it was a really fragile political position, and they just went, oh my goodness, we will support you to stand down, because we couldn't cope with what you're going through. And so I had to stand down. I did, and I'm so grateful I did, because I wouldn't have coped. I had a lot of counselling last year, and we had a really good Christmas, and I'm in a better place now. I'm certainly not standing myself this time. I'm not ready for that. There's still a major coroner's inquest to go through about what happened last year, and I just need some time and space to deal with that. But I'm here in the background trying to help and trying to make sense and trying to look after people in Cockermouth, and it's not gone very well. you know, it's, God, where do I begin? It's a really hard job being a county councillor. I think I did 453, took on 453 bits of casework in 4 years, just looking at my records. I absolutely loved it because I could make such a big positive difference to people's lives, but it's not for everyone, and it's really hard to find people who are prepared to do it, because the kind of people who can do it well are mobbed with things that they can also do well that are much less stressful than this. So one of the things I've done was found 2 excellent candidates. We've got these elections coming up. I'm going to have to talk about this as well. For this new authority, our current councillors stay in place for another year, our county and district councillors, and then we're only going to have 2 councillors for this new authority, but they're being elected a year in advance to try and set up this new authority. And then their workloads are going to be massive. It is so hard. It's just so hard to find good people who will do it, and all the parties have been struggling. And lots of the current councillors are just standing down because they can't see how this can work. So I found a couple of good people in Cockermouth to stand as Lib Dems, which has been no small thing. Anyway, I'll come back to that. I just need to talk about really the collapse. People talk about British politics going downwards, but here in West Cumbria, oh my God. So it's so much worse than anywhere else. It's like most people know I spent 3 years living the plans to close maternity services in West Cumbria inside out, and they were my motivation for becoming a county councillor and fighting for that. But then I took on our youth mental health crisis, going door to door, talking to people, the stories they told me, oh my goodness, of the kids just not getting help, getting worse and worse over the years. Families falling apart, marriage breakdowns because of the stress of what was going on, parents having breakdowns. So I took that one on, and the first thing I did was went to a conference in London with top experts, and we all got to talk about what was going on in our area, and I was just asking people, where do I begin? I know lots of you have got problems too, where do I begin? And no one came and talked to me, and I went to the top people and said, look, nobody's talking to me. And they said it's because they thought they had CAMS crises with these services until they listened to you. It was so much worse. It's so much worse what you're experiencing. There isn't any precedence for this. It was just so much worse in West Cumbria, and that was my passion for a couple of years, turning that around and setting up new networks and so on. And again, we were all working cross-party. There was just a culture of trust among the people who were trying to do the same kinds of things that I was trying to do. And then the next issue we'd moved on to were extreme, again, horrific, worse than anywhere else in the country, problems in the family courts in this area. And children's services. And then Mark Jenkinson happened, and everything just changed overnight. This guy, he was elected, it just all got shut down. All the casework stopped. We had cross-party work going on these family courts and children's services issues, and we were just expecting him to join in and sign up. And when we asked him to, all of a sudden, all the Conservatives pulled out. And he wouldn't get involved. And with no Conservative support and 2 Conservative MPs in West Cumbria, we'd been promised the support of one of them, and that went as well. All of that collapsed. And then I started to look at the general casework coming out of his office, because an MP has a huge job to do. Dealing with all the services that aren't working correctly, fixing them where you can locally, taking issues to Westminster where things need to change at that level. And it just seemed like everything had stopped, like a car crash. And I've not seen anything going on of the normal work of an MP, nothing. And instead you've had this mass, all of a sudden over the winter of 2020, when I was still a county councillor, they decided to break up Cumbria and create two authorities. And this is the work of Mark Jenkinson, the MP for Workington, who's got a Conservative Allerdale Borough Council, and Mike Starkey, who is the Mayor of Copeland and therefore the leader of Copeland Borough Council. And Copeland is one of the, if it's not the worst council for financial failure in Britain, it is close to that. It's just a car crash, and Mayor Starkey's been running it for years. And Allerdale is a really weak council as well. I mean, you know, you just don't have the oversight. And suddenly they've been using the Tory machine to run a propaganda machine that both councils are fantastic. And this has been going on for about 18 months now. Both councils are fantastic, or they're doing amazing work, and county council is failing. Well, county council's been really well run for years by all objective measures. So it's just total propaganda. None of this is real. This is a sodding car crash in action. And instead of having normal politics for 46 months of the 48-month term of a council cycle, and then a bit of a Barney for 2 months where people piss each other off by saying things that aren't really very helpful, it's just relentless propaganda. And they came up with this idea to split up Cumbria, and it's been discussed in the past and always rejected because there are huge problems with it. Serious problems. You're creating a tiny council by population. It's going to be really hard to run the complex services that counties always run with way less than the recommended number of population, because you haven't got the resources to recruit good people to run the services. And the geography is an absolute sodding nightmare of dealing with people, councillors in Longtown and Millom, meeting up for meetings, and meeting in person is crucial. And none of these questions have been answered, and it's why it hasn't gone ahead before. And instead of there being any sensible discussion, it was pushed through at lightning speed at the height of COVID. And I did about 100 hours due diligence on this because as county councillor I was in the loop of the comms, and oh my goodness, there were just no answers, just abuse of anyone who raised concerns and propaganda. And other MPs, they're constantly sending out newsletters to their constituents about the emerging issues with COVID crises and so on, supplying them with the information they need about how to cope with things that are new, reporting on all the work they've been doing, staying in touch with them, letting them know how to contact them. And none of that's going on. We just get emails about surveys about golden eagles that are clearly just data harvesting to run a massive Tory machine. So we are going down from 7 local authority councillors to 2. And it's virtually impossible to get anyone to want to do it who's up to it. And God knows if anyone's up to it. I don't know if this job is deliverable. And most of the existing senior councillors for Cumbria are being wiped out. They're just walking away from this. All the Tories are gone. This has been a reverse hijack by Mark Jenkinson and his cronies, nurturing the traditional BNP vote in Maryport and reaching out to that, which we've spent so many years trying to keep at bay. Here's a massive car crash in action. Another thing about the way politics was set up was that we had 2 county councillors for Cockermouth here and 5 district councillors. And becoming a district councillor, you could do it after work in the evenings, so you could learn how to be a good local authority councillor, and you could find out whether it suited you, and the public could see you in action before you stepped up to be a county councillor, which is a daytime job. And of course this new council is going to have to be daytime because of the geography. So many issues. And so what I've been trying to do over the last few months, and I've been home in Cockermouth a lot, talking to people, is just trying to work with people from different parties to recognise that we are going to get a load of councillors whose only qualification for the job, because these are, I mean, Cockermouth North, Cockermouth South, heavyweight Tory seats. I'm the only non-Tory who's ever won one of them. And when I stepped down, we did have a fabulous candidate. She'd come at no notice. It was, and then she broke a leg. And the Tories just won it with a paper candidate who didn't campaign. Easily. It wasn't close. So I've been trying to talk to people from other parties. Can we get out a consistent message about what's going on? Can we prioritise working in the seats where we've got great candidates and stepping back in the ones where this is with Labour and the Greens, where another party's got a really great candidate. And those kind of talks are going on all across the country, and they are working in many areas. Certainly they seem to be working here with the Greens. I've had some great conversations, they get it. And with Labour in many areas. But Labour in Cockermouth, with this conversation's been going on for a couple of months now, and they didn't have their candidates in place. And the conversation seemed to be very positive. And I mean, they totally understand that if Labour and the Lib Dems fight each other, we get Tories. Tories whose main qualification for the job is that they think this stuff is real, credible, and so in Cockermouth we have two really good Lib Dem candidates. Fantastic. We have Fiona in Cockermouth North. If you live in Cockermouth, you should have had lots of literature already. Fiona in Cockermouth North, she was a senior civil servant. She ran the Cattle Movement Centre. She's run all sorts of things. She is credible. She's very, very brilliant. She can pick up an issue really quickly, deeply understand it, ask all the relevant questions, stay on the case. She's raised her kids here. Her husband delivers most people's babies. And she's really well known through all the churches and through social networks and so on. And we've got Stephen Barnes in Cockermouth South, who's a Cockermouth councillor, just a really great guy doing national level jobs and all sorts. Again, raised his kids here, really well known, liked, respected. And Labour after selections have ended up with one really credible candidate and one who doesn't have those skills yet. And so we've just said, well, why don't we stand forward in one seat and back in the other? And unfortunately, over the last week, they're just going for us. They're fighting us for second place. And it's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe they don't actually care about acting in the interests of Cockermouth and the people here, and they're just fighting petty battles against us that mean nothing. I just want Labour to be credible in these circumstances. We need a good Labour MP here at the next election, and in some areas around here there's better stuff going on, so hopefully there's some hope. But if you're involved with the Labour Party in Cockermouth, please can you get them to behave vaguely sensibly? Please can you stop them focusing on fighting us and get them focusing on the issues and getting us some... We've only got the chance to get 2 councillors in place. We need good councillors for Cockermouth. It is so painful what's watching what's happened since I stood down. I had all sorts of agreements in place for works to go ahead, you know, below Fitzview and Fairfield View, that path. There was a plan in place to deal with that. The flood resilience work in Pat Castle, that was due to go ahead any day, and the committee that approved it had a Tory chair, key Tory members. There's absolutely no excuse for it not to happen. We've got horrendous potholes right outside my house here and over there, really deep potholes. And the Tory we ended up with has not even come for a handover, and I've offered again and again and again. And one of the most important things in my job was taking a really detailed handover from Eric Nicholson, the previous Conservative county councillor, where we handed over all sorts of complex and sensitive issues, and he set me up to succeed. I don't know. I think the message I would like, if you're watching this in Cockermouth, the message I'd like to leave you with today is, please, if you care about us actually having sane politics and representation for Cockermouth, and it means things like, you know, our emergency response group during COVID, when they were struggling with issues, I was on the case in the background sorting them out for them. And I was always championing the fact that they exist to make sure they get funding in the future, that kind of thing. It really, really, really matters. I'm not joking. It matters. And if you think it matters and you care, please join a local political party. Please join Labour, you know, sort them out. Join the Tories, sort that out. Join the Greens and focus on their areas where they're campaigning. Where we are all supporting Jill to get in, because we want a strong Green voice on this council. And we want them involved so that they understand the realities of it. But please also consider joining the Lib Dems. I joined because I was campaigning on education issues during the coalition government, and I thought it would be a car crash. I know most people hate all politics, and it just never was. I was surrounded by amazing, amazing, totally inspirational people who have just kept me on an even keel through really difficult times struggling with complex issues. They've always been there for me. If you want to see what's happening with the Lib Dems just now, watch Ed Davies' conference speech for spring 2022, and it will get you up to date. Ed Davey is our leader. He is an amazing politician. He was stunning when he came here to West Cumbria in 2017. We had an open meeting there where top people from the nuclear industry, top Green campaigners, and in the same room asking him complex questions, and he just transcended it all because he so deeply understood all these issues. He was Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change during the coalition government, and he drove international agreements on climate change and had in place plans to keep the lights on and develop, you know, he was just on top of it all. It was only 2015 when we had a sane energy strategy for Britain. I think it's nearly time to stop. Please ask me anything. I'll post links to this on my Councillor Rebecca Hanson Facebook page that's still live, even though I'm not a councillor now. And I will just try and answer your questions. I know some of the things that have been said about me. That's one of the hard bits of being a politician, is that people think it's okay just to say things that aren't real and aren't true. I am just someone who came from a tough background and got to Cambridge and then wanted to give every bit of my life back to helping other people. There's nothing else to it. And I just really care. Please get involved. Please help. And please ask me anything if I might be able to help. Bye for now.